Okay, we are live. We are live, right, sweetie? And we're Instagram's coming on live now.
Instagram's gonna come on live.
Sorry for the delay, you guys. We kept getting kicked out, so here we are. Welcome, A-listers. Dawn, can you close that door,
Yeah,
Glenn?
yeah. Let me start the Instagram.
Yeah. Uh,
We're good.
Guys, same format as we always do, A-listers. Same format. So I'm going to give you some training, right? And then we'll open it up for Q&A. So have your questions ready. And then at the end, I'll give you some marching orders for the week, and you can, put those in the chat, and we'll be good to go. So, um, uh, before I do that, mark your calendars, guys. Mark your calendars, March 2nd and March 9th. March 2nd and March 9th. Those are the next times we're going live as A-listers, okay? So put that in your calendar. Also, March 15th through the 19th, I'm planning something really special for you guys. More on that next week. But make sure you're ready for that. A week long, you know, special something, March 15th through 19th, okay? So mark that. Today, we're going to talk about something really crucial, especially in this environment, right? I want to teach you how to move any audience to action. So any audience, whether they're new, whether they're old, whether you know them, whether you don't know them, whether no matter what the environment is providing, I'm going to have you have this ability through today's training on how to get that audience to take action. Okay, and it's going to be pretty simple. It sounds hard, but it's pretty simple. You're just going to have to use your human instincts a lot more than most people do. Okay. Because I want you guys to be able to build your communities, right? Whether that's in person or whether that's online. I want you to build your community. I want you to have your community take action and you be the leader of that group, right? So that's my desire for you. And there's one simple thing that you've got to be able to do. You've got to be able to read the temperature of the room, right? Now, that room might be virtual, right? Or the room might be in person. But you guys have faced this all of your life. You just forget that you have. People sometimes misread the temperature of the room, and then they start at a different temperature than their room is at, right? So I want you to be able to read that and read that fast, okay? You're really good at this. You just have forgotten how, and I'm going to retrain you on how to do that. Let me just give you a couple examples of how this might work. So, when you go to the movie theater, right, you've got all these different people coming into the movies, right, sitting in seats, and some of them are right next to you. And they're all from different places in the world. Everything is different about all those hundreds of people who are all in the same audience. Like their religions might be different, their sexual preferences might be different, their beliefs are different, their races are different. Everything's different about all these people coming into this theater. Well, how does how do they do this? The movie maker, how do they get all of those different aspects of all those different people? How do they get them all on the same page? How do they get all those different temperatures? Some people might be upset and hot. Some people might be bored and cold. So the temperatures go from 0 to, 400 degrees. How does the movie maker get all those people on the same temperature, on the same page, to go on this journey of this movie together? Well, they do it simply through story. Through story. I know that may sound very or too simple to you. It is how you and me are going to do it too. So the story gets everybody in the audience at the same temperature, whether this one's mad and this one's, distracted, they're all get the same temperature once the story's beginning to be told. Now think about how you can use this now with your communities, whether you're doing a webinar, or whether you're doing an in-person speech, or whether you're doing a live broadcast virtually. When you start with story, you get everybody on the same page. You get everybody at the same temperature, regardless of where they're coming from. That's the key, right? But you got to be able to match that. You got to be able to feel that temperature and then take them where you want to take them through story. In this day and age, in the environment that we live in right now, is a great example, you guys. Would you say that the temperature of the people in our environment right now, would you say that that temperature is cold? Or would you say that the temperature is a little testy, a little hot? Yeah, I think you're right. I think your gut is right. Our world is very on edge, right? Whether that's political or having to do with pandemics and school openings or closings or restaurants or the economy, everybody's very high in temperature, right? So if you're going to get those people to follow you, you're going to have to be the leader, right? So what you're going to have to do, and what you're going to have to do best, is you're going to have to be able to bring that temperature down. And you bring the temperature down by telling a story. By telling a story. So then everybody, even if somebody's hot, even if somebody disagrees with you, like I hate, who you vote for. I hate that the schools are opening again. Whatever disagreement you may have, whatever it is, story gets everybody on the same temperature. It puts them in the same vehicle. And it takes you to the top. That makes you a leader. Now, that is a valuable asset to have in this day and age where we're treating each other not very well, right? I have a buddy, Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann. He's a retired Green Beret, Special Forces, right? What he used to be able to do in Afghanistan, so he would go over there and he would have to sit down or try to get a meeting with the tribal elder, right? So obviously, this person doesn't trust Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann at first, right? He doesn't trust him because he's with the American military and this guy's an Afghan elder, right? So the distrust has been thousands of years, hundreds of years. Okay, so it's deep and they're fighting. It's life and death, right? How does he get that elder to put his arms aside and listen and get on the same page? Do you know what he had to do? Because the temperature was so high, he had to talk about something that they had in common. And what they had in common was how to irrigate the farms in arid environments. So Scott's grandfather was a tobacco farmer in North Carolina way back in the day, right? And this elder, he also knew irrigation because he came from thousands of years of farmers who had to irrigate in a desert, arid environment. And Scott would tell the story of his grandfather and how they got water to these arid areas. How did they irrigate the tobacco? Well, that put him on the same page. That put the temperature the same in the room where they could put their arms aside and actually discuss and actually be on the same page and actually negotiate. So if that's possible over in wartime, in Afghanistan, is that possible for us here? Yes, of course it is, but it takes story to bring that temperature down. That's one example, okay? So you're a leader if you can get that temperature down. You're also a leader if you could get that temperature to come up. So let's give an example of this. Say you're doing a webinar. Say you're about to be introduced to give a speech or to do a live, and everything is going wrong. Like the temperature is really low, like it's a cold audience. They don't know you. They don't necessarily trust you. They don't like you necessarily, right? You have to get their temperature up. You have to bring a cold audience up, right? How do you do that? Well, you do it by the same way that you bring a temperature down. You share yourself. You share a personal story. You share yourself, and then their temperature, a cold audience, starts to come up to the level that you want it, and then it matches you. That makes you valuable in our world today. That makes you a leader in our world today. Now, you can't just share any old story, you guys. It's got to be personal. It's got to mean something to you, right? To get the temperature up or to get the temperature down where you need it, where people can hear you, okay? Where they can follow you. You guys, this is so crucial in our world today if you're interested in leading. And I think you are, otherwise you just wouldn't be here, right? What I want for you is I want you to build your community. That makes you the leader, right? So you're going to have this acute ability to bring the temperature where you want it. The easiest and simplest way to do it, just like the movie makers do when hundreds of people are in their audience, all from different temperatures and different places, they get them all on the same page, all at the same temperature, by sharing the story, in this case, the movie. So the movie takes them through this, gets them all in the same place, all pushing together, all choosing the hero or the heroine, all at the same time. If you want to build a community like that, and that's what I want you to have, right? Because I want you to have the power that you deserve, that you have already, and you've got to be able to do that through your story, okay? That is the fastest and that is the easiest way to get the temperature where you want it, regardless of the medium that you're working in, whether it's in person or online. That is the training that I want you to have today, right? You don't even know the power that you have. You don't even know the leadership muscles you have unless you have the ability to share yourself. You have to have the ability to tell your own story so that people know how to choose you and they know how to follow you. Well, that makes you the leader in this case. One example, you guys, I was getting introduced, right, to be a speaker. This was a live event. This was a few years ago, and right before they were going to introduce me, right before it was my turn to go out, they wanted to do like a memorial for one of their, teammates who had passed. And so it was very, as you might guess, it was very sad. It was very solemn. It was, they were saying prayers and they were honoring this person who had died, who I didn't know who this person was. It was somebody else's audience, right? It wasn't my audience. I was just coming on as a speaker. So I could hear this going on. I'm like, oh my gosh, the audience is all now down at a very solemn temperature. Now, I can't come out with a bunch of energy going, hey, I'm Bo Eason, and here's what I'm going to teach you today. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. You've got to match the temperature in the room, and only when you enter by matching the temperature of the room can you take the temperature up or down where you want to take it, okay? So you've got to be conscious and you've got to read it, and you've got to read it pretty quick, right? You ever walked into a room and, something's being discussed in that room that you're not meant to hear, and then everybody gets really quiet and goes, oh my gosh, she just entered the room. Well, you've got to match the temperature of that room to get that team, to get those people in that room to follow you, right? So when they were doing this memorial, right, I didn't come in high energy, right? I came in at the energy they were at, right? The temperature that the audience was at. And then I slowly ticked it up by sharing myself, by sharing a story. And sure enough, after about a couple of minutes, the audience is at the level I want them to be at because they're following the story. You got me? Okay. So, but the environment that you're going to be faced with the most, because our environment right now is so hot and so controversial, and we're so kind of at each other's throats. You can see people doing this on social media. You can see people fighting over parking spaces. Like, you can feel it in the ethers of our environment. And your job in that case is to share a story, is to tell the story. Because story always puts everybody in a shared environment. And that makes them like a team. That's the one thing, you guys, I will tell you about being a former athlete, is the beauty of playing sports is when you play at the highest level, everybody on your team is from a different part of the country or a different part of the world. And they're all different colors, and they're all different religions, and they're just different. They were raised, in different ways, right? And you might have disagreements in the locker room off the field, right? But once you're on the field, everybody's at the same temperature. And that temperature during an athletic event is winning takes precedence over everything, right? So you're all at the same temperature because you have a common goal of winning. The story of winning puts you all at the same temperature, right? Regardless of any disagreement you have off the field, it doesn't matter. You're all holding hands inside the huddle. You're all hugging each other and dancing around like little kids because you just won together. So I want you to start looking at every environment that you enter, whether it's a Starbucks in person, whether it's something online like a live like we're doing today. It doesn't matter. It's your job as a leader to read the temperature of the room and then take it to where you want it. And you do that by sharing your story. By sharing a personal story so that everybody is at the same temperature, and now you can go wherever you want to take them, wherever you want to lead them. You got me? Okay, good. Let me pause there for a second, A-listers, and let me begin to answer some questions. Dawn is manning the chat, so she will pass the questions on to me. Let's put them in the chat and I'll begin to answer these because you might have some questions as to how do I do this? How do I do that? After a while of learning, because I used to do this in the theater all the time because, I had a show every single night. So every single night for, 4, 5, 6 months at a time, you're doing a show, right? And every audience is at a different temperature. Some of them might have come to the theater on a bus, and that bus may have broken down on the way to the theater, right? And so that level of temperature is different than a Friday night in New York City where everybody's partying and they show up to your show and they're hooting and hollering back at you. That's a different environment, right? So I, the performer, have to run out on stage and within milliseconds read the temperature. You can feel the energy and the heat or the coldness of that audience. And you come out and you go, okay, I'll match where you are now, but we're going elsewhere. Do you know how I know we're going elsewhere? Because I'm about to tell you a story. And the story is going to put us all at the same temperature. So you got to read it quick. It's harder doing it virtually, right? But you can still do it. Okay? Sweetheart, are we ready for some Q&A?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have a question here from David, and it says, any specific signs you look for in the audience to kind of gauge the temperature?
Yeah. Here's what, David, don't look necessarily, don't trust your eyes so much necessarily when you're seeing an audience. Because a lot of times when I look at an audience, they may look like they're um, kind of in a trance, right? Because that's good performance sometimes kind of puts people like they don't know, they're not self-conscious about their face, so they don't know what their face looks like. In fact, a lot of times when I'm performing, I'll see somebody's face in the audience, David, and they'll be like, they look bored, right? And they're not. They're not bored. Those will be the very people who come backstage and go, that was the greatest performance I ever saw. And I always say to them, well, maybe you should inform your face of that because your face looked bored. So don't necessarily trust what you're seeing, David, is trust what you're feeling from them. I've gotten really good over the years of feeling the audience and feeling where they are. And you can kind of, I know it sounds weird, but you know this feeling, David, because I know you've walked into rooms or walked into environments and there was danger in that environment and you knew it. But how did you know that? You felt it. Or you've walked into environments that are very solemn, like something sad. How did you know that? Is it something you saw? Is it something you felt? You've also walked into environments that there's like a friggin' party going on in there, right? That you weren't invited to. But you walk in on it, and it's not that you necessarily see it so much as you feel the energy and the temperature of that environment. David, I want you and I want all of you to start trusting your instincts because they are never wrong. If you notice, your instincts are never wrong. Now, if you spend a lot of time watching media outlets, their constant message to you is don't trust your instincts, trust ours, isn't it? And there's a reason they do that. I'm sure there is. I'm sure it's not in your best interest. But the world has taught you and has trained you, David, and all of us to not trust ourselves, to second guess our instincts. And that's the worst thing that anybody can do to anybody. You've got great instincts. You've got to trust them. When that hair stands on the back of your neck, there's a reason for that. When you smell fear in a room, there's a reason you smell the fear in the room. It's your instincts telling you something. But here's the best part about this. Here's what simplifies it for all of you. Start with story. Because story, regardless if you're entering a room full of fear or full of joy or full of anxiety, the story puts us all in the same place. It puts the temperature all even. So start with story. It gets everybody where you need them to be. Okay? That's how I would do it, David. And a lot of times you could see it with your eyes. I don't mean to don't completely trust your eyes. You have to see what you're seeing. But sometimes my eyes I made a misread based on how people were feeling about the performance. They look bored, their face looks bored, but they're only just listening. Some audiences don't laugh. They don't laugh because it's not funny. They don't laugh because they don't want to miss anything. That's a good audience. They may be quiet because they don't want to miss the next sentence. But a quiet audience is oftentimes a great audience. They're so paying attention, they don't want to miss the next line that you're about to say. Okay? Okay, what else, babe?
LA, I think that's her name, LA. She says, how do you start the story if you don't okay, wait. So how do you start the story? You don't want to announce it. Like if you don't say you're on a conference call with your team, you don't want to say okay, now I'm going into a story. Or,
Yeah, don't.
Story
Yeah,
time.
that's good. That's a great question. You don't necessarily If you're going to in a meeting with your team, right? This is how I would do it, and this is how I do it every time I have a meeting with my team or I have a meeting anywhere. I'm pretty much in storytelling mode from the get-go. But I don't announce it. I don't go, "Hey team, welcome everybody. Good to have you guys all together here. I'm about to tell you a story." Don't do that. Just be like you naturally are as a human being. We're storytellers. We're pack animals. We're meant to be together, right? So how we do that, and we're meant to all, equal the same temperature. How we do that is we share ourselves, right? So oftentimes I'll come into a meeting exactly what the environment I just left. So I may be in the other room getting my kids ready for school, like cooking them breakfast and getting their supplements and, getting their hair ready, whatever, right? And I bring that to the meeting. And I'll bring like a funny story or an antidote or some developmental thing that I just went through with my kids or the environment that I just left. That's very powerful, you guys, because it puts everybody into a world that they trust and love. Because if you talk about your story or the development or the environment that you're in, whether it's with your kids or whatever, it puts everybody at ease. It puts everybody on the same page at the same temperature, right? So I don't announce that I'm going to tell a story. I just go into a story. You guys, guess what happened? I was just making Lila some lunch, and she said, "Dad, I don't want to eat this kind of food anymore. I want to eat this." And I'll just go into that. And somehow that will connect us all, which that's what story does. And that's what us human beings are. We are human beings looking for connection. So if I start it by being disconnected like this, "Hi team, it's Bo, your leader. How are you? I'm about to tell you a story." Now you have all disconnection. People feel uncomfortable. They don't feel a part of the team. Feels weird. They feel on the outside instead of the inside. I just put people right in my kitchen. I put people right in the personal story and get them on the same page with me. And now I can lead because now we're on the same page. Okay? All right. Who else, babe?
So actually, well, there's a couple really good ones here. Amir says, do you have a physicality practice before you go online? And does physicality make a difference to engaging people online? But then Eric also says, how is this, in this virtual world through video, how do you read an audience or meet them where they are?
Yeah.
So there's the physicality piece about being virtual, but also connecting with the audience.
Yeah, let me answer the first one first. So we call it the Sacred Six. There is a warm up. It's an activation, right? Us human beings have to be activated. If you and me were going to run the 100 meters for the gold medal in the Olympics, do you think we would get ourselves activated before we ran that race? Yes. Do you think any performance of any kind, whether it's dance, whether it's song, whether it's a speech, whether it's doing the high jump, doing the uneven parallel bars in gymnastics, all of those things need an activation. Otherwise, you won't perform your best. You won't be warmed up. You won't be activated. So I get myself activated with something that we created called the Sacred Six, which is what I didn't create it. I was taught it. And that's how I activate myself, whether I'm in person or whether I'm virtual. So I go through a warm up. It has to do with voice. It has to do with the body, getting a little bit of pop to it, a little bit of sweat to it, a little bit of words out of my mouth and my body informed with this athleticism that I wanted to have when I'm doing a live, like now. So I go through that activation, and what that does too, as far as reading the room, it activates your raw animal instincts, because that's what activation does, right? It activates your raw animal instincts, which you can always trust. So when those are activated and acute, now you take the stage. Now you're a lot better off instead of just coming in cold, unwarmed up, not activated. You've been like that. Try running. Just try this, everybody. Try anything. Try running without having a warm up. Then get your butt activated, get warmed up, then run. See how those two things differ. One, your instincts are on fire, and the other one, you're like, oh, I'm all rusty. You feel stiff, feel like you can't communicate, right? So that's the sacred six. Tell me the second question
It was
again.
just about how do you meet an audience?
Where they are on virtually.
Yeah.
Well,
That connection.
you can, because connection equals connection, whether it's in person or whether it's virtual. Okay? Intimacy equals intimacy, regardless of whether it's on a phone call or it's in person on a date. Connection equals connection. Intimacy equals intimacy. Story equals both those things. Story puts you at that place. So you like when I'm doing a live, right? I can feel you guys. I can feel not only you guys who are on the live and you gals who are on the live, I can also feel the temperature of our culture and of our society. Like, you could feel it. If you just take a deep breath and you close your eyes for a second, you kind of could feel where our world, where our culture wants to go, right? And then you have to take that culture and you have to lift them up, connect them to story, and then take them to where you want to take them. Okay? So you can do it, and oftentimes when I'm doing lives, I can see people right in the gallery, right? Today I can't, but normally, like when I'm doing events and stuff like that, I can see them. So I can see what they're doing at home and get them on the same page, then take them to where I want to take them. Okay? You're right. It's not as easy, obviously, right, as it is in person. In person, you get pretty darn good at reading the room pretty darn fast. You can do the same, but you really got to trust yourself on that virtually. Yeah,
And
but
Michael says in a pre-speech routine, do you roam the audience to gain insight?
is this a live?
Yeah.
So say it again.
Do you roam the room before your speech just to gain insight? Like, why are you roaming the room before your speech?
Oh, me, I always do. Yeah, I'm always.
And is that just to gain insight, or what's that for?
Yeah, I do that because, animals, which, we are, they mark their territory, don't they? Right? Animals mark their territory so that other animals know that it's safe there or it's not safe there. Well, I was trained to mark my territory in every theater, in every hotel ballroom, in every environment that I'm in, so that my audience feels the safety before I enter the stage. So they're not in their seats, right? I'm in their seats. I'm marking my territory. I'm feeling the environment of that room way before the audience is even in the room. Then I go backstage after I provided all that safety out there in the audience, and I enter, the audience enters, they sit down, and then I enter the stage, right? Knowing that I've been where they are sitting right now. I know what it feels like to be in the balcony over there. I know what it's like to be in the front row right there where spit and stuff is coming out of people's mouths and falling on top of you. I feel the audience, and I've made the place safe for them to participate in this story that I'm going to take them on. So look, but you guys, I was trained at the highest level, where everything you do, all the training that you go through, is for the audience's safety, so that they have the safety and the permission to participate and follow you. And that's how I train people. And that's why I'm grateful that you're on this call and continue to be on these calls, because that's what I want you to do too. Because there's nothing more valuable than a leader in today's age. There is nothing more valuable than you being great in front of people so they feel safe enough and they feel the permission to follow you, and you take them to their full potential. There's no There's no more valuable position on the planet right now than leading people and having them fulfill on their own birthright, their own fulfillment of their own human potential. That is your job to lead them there. Nothing more valuable than that. That's what I want. Who else, Ben?
So, Peter is writing the story and performing the story different. So, like, the way it's written versus the way it's performed is different. And he said, how much of your storytelling changes when you're getting feedback from a live audience? How do you set the story up to engage the audience right away? I get panicky when I see them losing interest, and I don't know how to rein them back in.
Yeah. So I'm interested, and you're going to have to look at this yourself, right? You can put it in the chat. When they seem disinterested, what are you actually sensing? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What is that looks disinterested? I'm interested in that conversation, for one. So I want you to investigate that for yourself. Like, what are you seeing? Do you mean like they're pulling out their phone and texting, or they're, I was trained to never allow an audience to look away from me, the performer. That's how I was trained. And the people that train me, they're like, the world class, right? I want you to have that too. But I want to make sure you're accurate on what you're actually seeing or sensing. Because a lot of times, sometimes it looks like people are disinterested and they're really not. So I want you to be accurate there. You usually take people to the opposite place that they are, right? So if an audience is distracted, right? So there were several times I've performed a one-man show, a play, right? And, I've performed that thing over 1,000 times. But about 5 times of those over 1,000 times, somebody passed out in the audience, fainted in the audience, in the middle of the show, right? And I'm the only person on stage. So somebody had to take charge of that situation. Guess who that was? The leader of the situation. Who's the person on stage? That's you, that's me, right? So I had to take charge of that situation, bring the whole audience to that emergency, that fainting, allow the people, make a call, do this, telling people what to do in the middle of a show, you guys. And then after the paramedics can come, put the person on the stretcher and take the person out, then having to restart the show at the level, at the temperature that the audience is at that time, and then take them back to the crescendo of the climax of the show. You got to know. You and me, we're really good at this, at doing this. Great performers are really good at this, but here's the thing. You're responsible for every audience member. You're responsible for them. The story will take them. If you stick with the story will take them to the right temperature. Now, the temperature in that case, after somebody's getting carted off to the hospital, and now the audience is sitting there looking at me like, what do we do now? I start with the story where we were. I say, what was I talking about, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, I was talking about my mom. Let's start right there. Okay, my mom was like this, and she did this, and she did this, and she told me this. I start telling the story of my mom, right? All of a sudden, the audience now is with my mom and with me in the middle of the story. Our temperatures are matching. They have now forgotten that somebody just got carted off 3 minutes ago and is in an ambulance right now. Because now I have taken them on a journey, on a story. They're back in the story. You guys, your story is the most valuable thing you've got. It gets people with you. It gets them on the same page with you, regardless of differences that you may have. Story gets you matched up again. Always go to it every time you need the temperature the same in the room. And as soon as you get them there, now your energy picks up. Now you can take them wherever you want. But story is the key to that kingdom. That's what you must know. Start with story. Whenever you need them on the same page as you, begin with story. Give them story. When they get off with you, get back to story. You're always focused on story. You're always focused on getting the audience to follow that story. That's your responsibility. That's your job. That's why people pay money to watch you perform, because you can take them to another world, the story world, the inner world of your personal story. If you can do that, people pay a lot of money for people to, people who can do that, because they don't want to necessarily be in the world that they're living in. They want to be in the world of the story that you're telling. Okay? Great job, you guys. Great. Those are great questions. Really great. And we'll keep going. We'll keep going deeper with this, because in our environment, I'm always looking at the world that we live in and how can you and me be the most valuable given the environment we have right now. And simple enough, it always comes back to story and the story you're telling and the responsibility to your audience or your community. Okay. Here's what I want to leave you with today, guys. I want to leave you with some marching orders like we always do. So I want you to name the area, the place in your life where you can change the temperature of the world. Name those places where you can actually make an impact in people's lives. Name that area in your world where you can change the temperature of people's lives and actually lead them, right? And then the second part of the marching orders is, and I think you know the answer already, the question is, how do you do it? How do you lead somebody? How do you change the temperature of somebody who completely may not like the way you look, may disagree with everything about you? How do you get them at the same temperature as you and actually give them permission to follow you? What's the area in your life that you can do that in? And how are you going to do it? Okay, I want to hear your comments. Like I said, you guys, we will see you again. Mark your calendars, March 2nd and March 9th, all right? And then March 15th through the 19th, right? You're going to hear more about this special surprise for you guys. I can't wait. You'll hear more about that next week, okay? All right, guys, great work, A-listers. Love working with you. Love having you. And have a great week. Get out there, tell your story, and lead people. We'll see you next time.